What's up, everybody? This is Dan Physics from Ex Machina Soundworks here in Brooklyn, New York, and today we're here with Daniel Neiman to talk about some speakers. How you doing, man?
Good. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there, hanging in there. It's a little rainy here today, but we'll get through it. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
yeah, it's a pleasure. Been glad we're able to get this going. I guess we'll just
Absolutely.
jump into it straight away. If you want to give us a little insight into who you are and what you do.
Yeah. My name is Daniel Neiman, and I mix music. That's pretty much it. Increasingly, that has become all I do. I mean, I will occasionally um, master records if someone twists my arm, but these days it's been almost exclusively mixing.
Hmm, nice. And do you have a preference between mixing and mastering, or mixing or
Yeah.
mastering?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Definitely mixing. I have done a lot of stuff. I've done tracking, I've done producing, and but by design these days, it's pretty much exclusively mixing.
Cool. Well, so tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got started in the music industry.
Sure, yeah. I started playing music at a very young age. I started playing guitar and drums, and had bands all through high school. And also, I went to high school sort of at the time that the the democratization of music making was really uh, starting to sort of take hold. Like it was really just easy to get, you know, prosumer gear for, relatively cheap. So I just, while I was playing in bands, I also got really interested in recording. The school I went to, we also had a little recording studio. And so, in addition to playing music, I was always sort of interested in the production side of things. Um, and then I ended up going to school at a program at NYU called the Clive Davis Institute, which sort of is designed to be a bit of a microcosm of the music industry. So you have people there who want to be artists, but also who want to be producers and engineers and managers and music journalists. And I went there originally as an artist, um, but quickly sort of changed directions. I worked with this band called Yesayer, recording their what ended up being their final record. They ended up disbanding, but I recorded that record and um, played a bunch of instruments on it. And when it came time to mix, they were sort of getting their ducks in a row. That album was self-released, uh, but they had previously been with labels who had presented them with lists of mixers. And so as I
Hmm.
recall, like they were gonna sort of shop around for mixers, but I just had the Pro Tools sessions on my computer and thought, I'm just going to take a crack at this, and ended up delivering very informally, but delivered a handful of, I guess you would call them spec mixes, and they ended
Hmm.
up awarding me the project. Not,
Nice.
as at that point, relatively. Oh, go ahead.
No, no, I was just saying nice. Like I'm familiar with
Oh, yeah,
Yesayer, like so. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So they ended up awarding me that project, and that was a huge learning experience for me. Ended up mixing that record, and then when that came out, I got some work from it, but I was still in school at that point, and that was sort of the aha moment for me. Mixing that record was when I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to mix records, and so during my time at school, I both took some courses from some really great mixing engineers. Kevin Killen being one of them, Jason Goldstein was another one, and then one of my mentors, producer and mixer Bob Power, um, we did an independent study together where I basically mixed a different song a week for different artists at the program, and sort of and got a lot of clients that way. And then after that independent study ended, I obviously learned a lot from Bob, but I also had sort of a bit of a client base already, just from that experience, and that sort of that grew. And even today, after graduating, like it's been several years, but I can still sort of trace if the client isn't directly either a peer or a classmate, I like all roads sort of lead back to that experience in that program. So
Hmm.
I was able to graduate um, and go freelance, and I've been doing that since.
Interesting. Well, I guess that leads us to the next question. Like, what are some of your early influences, or in general?
Yeah,
Like you mentioned Bob Power. Obviously, Bob's as you know, is an Ex Machina owner and whatnot.
yep.
But just in general, like, what are some of your like influences? Like, what was some of your inspirations?
Um, Musically, like a lot of my sort of like coming of age bands, so to speak, like bands I was listening to in early high school, were sort of in that sort of, I don't know, I guess you would call it second wave Brooklyn indie rock scene, and also just like I was big into Animal Collective and sort of and the sonic worlds of that kind of thing. In terms of mixing influences now, um, Bob is a big uh, figure in my life for a lot of reasons, including his work and his mixes. Chad Blake is a really big um, influence on me, just in terms of the way that he approaches. I mean, he's known for saturation, but what I really appreciate about his work is actually the sort of um, placement of sounds, and the way that he is able to achieve um, element separation uh, by way of sort of by using a wide textural palette. I mean, like I said, he's known for saturation, but he's a master of saturating one thing and then keeping something else very
Shoot.
clean and
Hmm.
pristine, and playing off of that contrast. And that's something that I really uh, think about a lot and strive for in my mixes.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Chad for honestly the same reason. Like I love the choices as far as like one just one thing's going to be dirty and grimy, and then the next thing just to be like super beautiful and just pure. And yeah, I love his mixes for that reason too, and Bob's for that matter. So
Yeah, and but the thing is that, like, talking about it, you would think that that would be super disjointed, it it works very well and is very
right,
compelling, and it often draws the listener in.
right. So can you tell us about a project that you've worked on you're particularly proud of, recently or in the past, and maybe something that made it special?
Sure. Yeah, there's one that just came out. It's by a group that I've worked with, I don't know, a handful of times now. Their band's name is Fake Dad, and all of their songs are really good. The one that I'm thinking about right now is the one that most recently came out at the time of recording. Is a song called "So Dramatic," and in some ways, it's actually reminiscent of some Chad Blake mixes, just in the sort of like grittiness. Um, I think for me, like as a mixer, I think it's sometimes tempting um, to do what's quote unquote right from the technical perspective, and even though sometimes the thing that is right, quote unquote, is completely wrong for the song. And that song was a good reminder. Like this song I'm talking about, "So Dramatic" by this group Fake Dad, is so um, vibey and crunchy and dirty, and a little smudged, but it's just there's a character to it that was totally inherent to the production, that I think I faithfully preserved. I'm proud of the way that mix came out, but it's just always a good reminder when those mixes sort of come down the pike. Just like, okay, I I need to sort of just stay out of the way and honor what's there,
Hmm.
because it's already
Hmm.
working really well.
Sure, makes sense. But even something you said at the beginning of the answer, your answer about like you know not just sort of doing things that are unorthodox, when that kind of like sense a reminder, it's like there are no rules. I mean, there are rules, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
rules are meant to be loosely followed, and liberty is where the art comes in. So
100%.
um, so yeah, that's cool. What is that? So that's been released. Is that like is it album or is it just song by song right now?
No, it's just a song. I I don't know if they have plans for a larger project that will include that. I've done, like I said, I've done a few songs for them in the past, but no, that's just a single that came out in sometime in August
Got it. Oh,
earlier
cool.
this month.
And it like people can find it on like Spotify and
Yep.
like so
Yeah.
cool.
Anywhere you listen to music, I'm pretty sure it's there. And if there's not to plug my website, but there on my website I have my full discography, and you can find that song, and then it links out to the major streaming platforms, so you can just select whichever one you want to listen to there.
Very cool. Very cool. So I guess I mean, funny. This leads into the next question. How convenient. So how would you describe your approach or philosophy to mixing?
Mm. I feel like um, this is maybe gonna sound like I'm not saying this out of laziness. Um, my approach to mixing, by and large, and obviously it depends, it varies project to project, because I sort of break projects down into three categories, right? Like there's the category where I don't really connect with the song, and I also know that the sounds weren't recorded particularly well, and that it's just going to be like pulling teeth to get it to work. And that obviously requires a lot of heavy lifting. Then there's the sort of middle ground where the song's good, the arrangement's good, but it's still going to be a little bit of teeth pulling to get the sounds right. And then there's the final category where I'm just like, that last, you know, coat of polish, and it's arrangement's good, production's good, sounds are good, and it just needs that last 5 to 10%. And each one of those scenarios requires a bit of a different approach. But by and large, to me, I mean, my main um, goal when I'm mixing is to do only what's required and nothing more. And that's not from a position of laziness. That's a position that's coming from a position of, um, again, trying my best to sort of honor what's there, and to,
Hmm.
unless it's specifically called for, unless the artist specifically asks for something, I'm not necessarily trying to impart or imprint any fingerprint or sound of my own. I'm trying
Hmm.
to elevate what's there, and in my experience, that generally doesn't mean throwing a zillion plugins at something. I really try and um, get the majority of the heavy lifting in a mix done with balance, pan, and simple EQ, and maybe a little compression. Um,
Hmm.
before I go crazy with plugins. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love plugins. I have a zillion plugins, but I try to uh, deploy them tastefully, and they don't all, go on from the start.
Right. Sure. Well, I mean, sometimes less is more, right? Like,
Totally.
you know, I mean, for myself personally, I've been finding even really in the last couple of years, the amount of processing that I'm doing is way less, and
Yeah.
sort of helps having great speakers to be able to hear like what you're doing and being able to go, oh yeah, like I don't actually need to compress that within an inch of its life. Maybe just some EQ, and you know that's almost all it needs sometimes.
I
So yeah,
agree,
I'm
and
with you on that.
I think people hide behind the deficiencies of their speakers, and so
Hmm.
do you know what I'm saying? Like they like, and I used to be guilty of this too before I had the Ex Machinas. It's like, well, I'm adding this EQ, and I'm adding this compressor, and I'm adding another EQ, but it's not quite working. Do I need another compressor? It's it's like the inability to hear what's really going on almost
Hmm.
creates this impulse to just add more, to try and fix it and try and fix it and try and fix it, and then before you
Right.
know it, you're in this tail chasing loop, um,
Right.
where you're getting all types of issues, phase shift and whatever
Hmm.
else that wouldn't necessarily occur if you just were able to hear what was going on from the start.
For sure. For sure. Which also leads, I mean, into the next like question is like, can you explain how Ex Machina loudspeakers has affected your process, or impacted your process? Do they do
Yeah,
anything unique for you that other speakers don't?
yeah. I mean, they have impacted my process radically. I mean, so me getting the Ex Machinas coincided with me moving to a new room. And before I was in this room, I was on another pair of, you know, near to mid field 3-way speakers. But both because of the quality of those speakers and because of the quality, or I should say lack thereof, of my room, I was really mixing a lot on headphones. I would say 70 to 80% on headphones. And I was just running into problems, you know, both with mix translation, where, you know, some mixes would sound great and some mixes I'd get them on a different system and they'd, you know, just wasn't what I had thought they were. And it
Mm-hmm.
required a lot more sort of checking on a bunch of different systems. But then also just from a hearing health perspective, like I wasn't that excited about being in headphones 8 to 10 hours a day.
Right.
So I knew very intentionally that I wanted to shift to speakers.
Yeah.
I was expecting that shift from headphones to speakers to just be really, really difficult. And I was pleasantly surprised, to say the least, that, I mean, I got the Ex Machinas in the room and I spent, you know, a few days getting the positioning right. But once they were set up and on the stands, I was kind of off to the races. And I was shocked to find that when I did a mix on the Ex Machinas and then brought them into the headphones that I know very well, that there weren't any like glaring issues. And so that is how, you know, this is a very circuitous answer to your question. Like, the Ex Machinas are now the way that I start every mix. Every single mix, like I said, you know, I try to do the bulk of the heavy lifting. You know, earlier I said this in an earlier answer. Like, I try and do the bulk of heavy lifting, just with balance, panning, light compression, and EQ. That all happens on the Ex Machinas, and they give me what I need. And then, you know, and then I'll switch to headphones and see how it sounds. And maybe, okay, I need to go in and declick, and I'll do that on headphones or something like that. But the heavy lifting is all done on the Ex Machinas. And I have found that doing it that way, you know, sometimes like starting a mix on headphones or starting a mix on a different playback system and then bringing it onto the Ex Machinas, it can be kind of hit or miss as to whether or not it will translate both to the Ex Machinas or to other systems. Whereas when I start a mix on the Ex Machinas, I can bring it to seemingly any other system and it translates, it makes sense, and it clicks. It's like I'm in gear. You know what I'm saying? As a mixer, I am always thinking about mix translation. Because something can sound good on one playback system, but if it doesn't sound good on other playback systems, then you're kind of dead in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned both from experience and from mentors over the years that what might sound good to you, you being the engineer, is obviously important, and obviously you can learn a subpar room or a subpar set of speakers, but the sort of ultimate metric for whether a system is performing is the feedback you're getting from clients, and that is sort of like the gold standard for me. I can have a system in my room with whatever idiosyncrasies it may have, and think it sounds great, but if I send it to the client and there's, you know, a long list of notes, and revision after revision after revision request, then something's wrong. And
Right.
for me, this workflow, having the Ex Machinas as my primary monitors, having, you know, as you can see, like a couple of other smaller playback systems, and then headphones as sort of secondary checks, has just proven very successful on that front. I have found that I am getting work done faster, that I'm getting fewer revisions, and that my clients are happier. And ultimately, that is what we want as mixers with our monitoring systems.
Right. Right. Yeah. Reclaim time. Right. You know.
Totally.
So cool. Well, so I guess what advice would you give to like other engineers, like maybe like up and coming, budding, guys that are out there, like what bit of sage advice would you impart upon them if you had the opportunity?
Um, weird to be weird to be giving advice because personally feel like I'm relatively early in my career as a mixer, but
Hmm.
um, I will say I think it's important to work on basically to say yes to everything you can within reason. I mean, obviously, if you're feeling exploited and working for absolutely nothing, there might be some of that is just necessary, and that is, for better or for worse, sweat equity. But you know, barring those situations, I think just saying yes to as many projects as possible and as many types of music as possible, and exposing yourself to as many different scenarios as possible, um, is always a good thing. Um, I would say, um, this is obviously topical, but without a playback system that you know and trust, um, you're kind of grasping at straws, and that investing in good monitoring, and when I say good monitoring, I also include room acoustics in that,
Hmm.
assuming that monitoring is speakers, um, will pay dividends both in terms of time saved and also in terms of client satisfaction. So that's another piece of advice. And then the final piece of advice is boring, but maybe the most important, and that is to just do everything that you possibly can to protect your hearing. Um, be that, hearing protection or avoiding loud scenarios or whatever it is, just, um, yeah, protect your hearing, wear earplugs.
Okay. Maybe I'll ask you another question that's sort of similar, but like a little bit more personal, I suppose. So, like, what's the best piece of advice you've received in your career, and how has it shaped you as a mixing engineer?
Mm. I think this is a piece of advice that I got from my mentor, Bob Power, who I talked about earlier. Um, and that is make yourself um, indisposable to whoever you're working with, be it your clients. Um, Let me start that again, because that is whoever
Hmm.
you're working with. Yeah, no, I guess the piece of advice that I think about the most and that has stuck with me is one that I got from my mentor Bob Power, who I talked about earlier, and that is um, to be indisposable uh, to whoever you're working with. Um,
Hmm.
that that you want to be so good at what you do that your clients practically have no choice than to work with you. Um, and I'm not saying that I'm necessarily there, but that's always something that I strive for on every project, is to just um, deliver at the highest level that I can. Um,
Hmm.
be that my communication with the artist, be that with my turnaround times, be that with the actual quality of work. Um, yeah.
Hmm. Right. That's definitely good advice. Um, I guess to finish up here is where can people find out more about you? Like social media, you mentioned earlier, your website. Uh, Now you
Yeah.
have an opportunity to do a little bit of.
My website's like
Okay.
home base for me. That is www.danielneimansound.com. And that has my whole discography. That has a contact page if you want to get in touch. And also links out to, when times are slow, I will sometimes uh, post articles and mixing videos. So there's links to all that on the site.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, we'll definitely put that down below in the in the video description too when we put this up on YouTube, so everybody can click on it and find you. Um,
Cool.
I think that kind of wraps up our time, and I really want to say thank you so much for your time. This has been great, and I'm glad we were able to get this done.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Dan.
Anytime, Daniel. If you need anything, you know where to get me. So we'll catch up soon.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Cool. Take care. Have a great day.